Hello there, and welcome to Sleepy Cosmos channel. Tonight's question sounds almost like something meant to keep you awake. What are the biggest black holes we've ever found? And yet, the true answer is the opposite of alarming. The heavier something becomes out there in the dark, the more it settles, the less it moves, the more it simply stays. Think of it less as a mouth and more as an anchor. Not something reaching for you, but a weight that has found the bottom of its own harbor and has no more reason to shift. Tonight, we will let that idea carry us all the way down. We have 4 regions to drift through tonight, and you don't need to hold on to any of them, because I will carry them all for you. First, we drift into the harbor at nightfall, where I'll tell you what a black hole actually is, in plain and unhurried words, and where we'll find the anchor resting beneath the light of our own galaxy, closer than you might expect and far less frightening than its name suggests. Then we drift out into neighboring waters, past the nearest large galaxies, each one holding its own great anchor at its center, keeping its stars turning in patient, unbroken circles. From there we sink into the deepest moorings, the heaviest anchors ever measured by careful human eyes, weights so large that comparing them to anything familiar stops making sense. So instead, we'll let them become something to rest against, like a stone at the very bottom of a lake, holding everything above it in place. And last, in the long watch, we'll sit with deep time itself, how these anchors sleep for ages between meals, how astronomers waited and watched, and how they slowly came to know these anchors not by sight, but by the way each one holds everything nearby in one long, faithful orbit. Before we drift down together, if this kind of night has ever helped you rest, a like or a subscribe helps this channel find its way to someone else who is also lying awake somewhere tonight, listening for a voice to lower the lights. You don't need to do anything about that now, though. That's a thought for the morning, if it comes to you at all. For now, there is nothing here to hold on to. No thread to follow with sharp attention. No facts to remember. No place you need to be but here, in the dark, listening. Let your shoulders ease down into whatever is beneath you. Let your jaw loosen. Let your hands go heavy and open, palms up, asking for nothing. Settle in. Let's begin. And so the wandering settles, the way a small boat settles when its wake finally catches up with it and smooths flat behind. You find yourself somewhere you did not quite choose to be, and yet it feels chosen for you. A harbor with no moon tonight, the water black and glassed over, the sky above it so clear that the stars seem to have been poured rather than placed. There is no wind worth mentioning. There is only the faint creak of old rope, the tide breathing in and out beneath the hull the way your own chest is beginning to breathe, longer on the exhale than the inhale, the way breath goes when a body has decided, somewhere below thinking, that it is safe to rest. You are not going anywhere tonight. You are only here, at the edge of dark water, under a sky that has kept its secrets for longer than any shoreline has existed to wonder about them. Feel the boards beneath you settle into their own weight, the whole hull finding the exact level the water has already decided for it. No argument between the two. Only agreement. Somewhere below, past what any lantern could reach, a chain runs down into the dark and ends in iron, and that iron has already done its work for the night, found the bottom, dug in, gone still. You do not need to check on it. You do not need to wonder whether it is holding. It is holding the way old, patient things hold, without effort, without strain, simply by being heavier than the currents that would otherwise carry you off. Let that thought be the first thing you set down tonight, because it is also, in its own way, the whole of what we will spend these hours exploring. Tonight the water holds a question, and the question is a gentle one. Though its subject has a fearsome reputation, what are the biggest black holes we have ever found? Say the phrase to yourself and notice how the mind braces, just slightly, the way shoulders brace before a cold splash, because we have been told in other places, in other voices, that these are monsters, devourers, cosmic drains down which light and matter and maybe meaning itself are helplessly sucked. Let all of that drift off the side of the boat tonight, out past the lantern light, because it was never quite true, and even where it brushes against true, it was never the important part. Think instead of an anchor. Not a mouth. Not a maw, an anchor. The heaviest, stillest object aboard any vessel. The one thing whose entire purpose is to hold, not to chase. And here is the first small truth this night will rest on, repeated softly enough that it can sink in rather than land. The heavier the anchor, the stiller the harbor. A light anchor lets a boat swing and drift with every current. A heavy one holds the whole vessel steady, lets everything around it settle into a slow, dependable turning. That is what a black hole is, out there in the dark water of space. Not a monster reaching for you. An anchor, holding its harbor still. To understand why an anchor this small, and some of them, cosmically speaking, are astonishingly small, can hold something as vast as a galaxy steady. It helps to let go of the picture of space as an empty room that things simply sit inside of. Space is not a room. Space is more like the harbor water itself, a surface that can dip, that can curve, that answers to weight. Drop something heavy onto quiet water and watch how the surface bends around it. How anything nearby begins, very naturally, to roll toward the dip. That bending is not a force reaching out to grab the smaller object. It is simply the shape the water has taken. Gravity works the same way, through the fabric of space and time together, one continuous shape rather than an invisible hand. A star bends that fabric a little. A black hole, because all of its weight has folded down into an impossibly small point, bends it enormously. The way a bowling ball dropped on a mattress makes a well far deeper than its size would suggest. Nothing is reaching. Nothing is pulling in the sense of chasing. There is only a shape, and things that come near enough simply follow the curve of it, the way water finds its own low places without ever being told to. Now, deep inside that curve, past a certain point, there is a line. And this is the part of the black hole that earns it its name, though even this deserves to be pictured with ease rather than dread. Picture the waterline on the hull of this very boat, the mark where the dark harbor water meets the dry wood above it. Below that line, everything is submerged, unreachable by ordinary means. Above it, everything sits in open air, free to move as it likes. A black hole has its own kind of waterline, called an event horizon, and it works on light the way this hull's waterline works on air. Below it, light itself cannot rise back up and out. Not because something is dragging the light down, but because the space itself has curved so steeply, so completely, that up no longer leads anywhere. Every direction inside that line bends back toward the center. The way every path down a steep-walled well eventually leads to the bottom. That is all a black hole truly is, a point of such folded weight that space closes over it, and a boundary, the horizon, marking where light stops being able to climb back out into the visible night. Nothing more mysterious than that. A waterline, drawn in starlight instead of water. Above that line, light behaves exactly as it always has, streaming off freely into the dark for anyone's eye to catch. The way lantern light spills off the surface of this harbor in every direction without asking permission. It is only below it that the old rules change, and even then, the change is simple rather than sinister. A boundary that only points one way. Ships pass over waterlines every day of their working lives and think nothing of it. Light, too, would pass this boundary without incident if it were only ever moving outward, away from the center. The trouble, if there is any trouble at all, belongs only to light already on the inward side, already below the waterline, and nothing out here, drifting in this harbor with you tonight, is anywhere close to that line. That line sits impossibly small, impossibly far, tucked at the bottom of a well most things never come near. And here is the part worth letting settle all the way into your shoulders, into your jaw, into wherever you are, even now, holding on to that old borrowed fear. A black hole does not roam. It does not hunt. It does not reach across a galaxy with some invisible arm and drag unsuspecting stars toward it out of empty distance. Out here, at any ordinary range, its pull on a passing star or a drifting cloud of gas is no different, no stronger, than the pull any object of the same mass would have. A sun is a sun. Whether that sun's mass is spread wide and glowing or folded down into darkness. What changes is only what happens if something drifts very, very close, right up alongside that folded weight, near enough to feel the curve grow suddenly and impossibly steep. Think of this harbor's own anchor, resting somewhere below the hull on its long chain. The anchor does not chase the boat. The boat does not fear the anchor from across open water. Only if the boat itself drifted, slowly, carelessly, directly over the spot where the chain runs taut, would the two ever draw close enough to matter. That is the whole and true relationship between a black hole and everything around it. Distant things drift past in perfect safety, held only in the loosest, gentlest curve of gravity's shape, the way this boat is held by its own mooring. Free to sway, free to rest, never in danger of being pulled somewhere it did not choose to drift. So let the shoulders come down another notch. Let the old dramatic pictures, the churning drains, the reaching darkness drift out past the lantern light and not come back tonight. What is left, once the fear has been poured off like excess water from a cupped hand, is something closer to reverence, and reverence is a far better companion for sleep than fear ever was. Let your gaze lift now, up off the black harbor water, up past the mast, to the pale river of light running the length of the sky above you, that soft, uneven band of countless small stars we call, from inside it, the Milky Way. You are looking, in a sense, straight down the length of your own home harbor, along the great, slow wheel of 100 billion suns turning together in the dark. And somewhere near the very center of that wheel, hidden behind veils of dust no ordinary eye could part, rests an anchor of our own, the one our whole galaxy has been quietly turning around since long before there were shorelines, or boats, or anyone awake to wonder about any of it. Follow that band inward now, follow it toward the middle. That is where tonight's patient tour of the deep water truly begins. And if you keep following that pale band of light stretching overhead, the one made of 100 billion distant hearths all glowing at once, it leads you somewhere in particular. It leads you home. Because our own galaxy, the wide spiral we live inside without ever seeing its shape, rides on an anchor too, one set precisely at its center, patient and unseen, holding the whole vast harbor in its long, unhurried turn. We call it Sagittarius A, and you don't need to remember the name. You only need to know it's there, the way a sleeping town knows the harbor wall is there, unseen in the dark, simply doing its quiet work of holding everything in place. 26,000 light-years away, a distance so wide it barely means anything to a body lying still under blankets, so let it just mean far. Let it just mean safely far, farther than any worry could ever travel. Sits a point where 4,300,000 suns worth of mass has folded itself down into something smaller than our solar system. Not 4 million suns burning side by side, just their combined weight gathered, resting, an anchor of extraordinary heft, dropped once at the founding of our galaxy and never lifted since. How would anyone ever find such a thing, tucked behind thick curtains of dust at the galaxy's core, giving off no light of its own to point the way? Not by seeing it, by watching what danced around it instead. For decades, astronomers turned their finest instruments toward that crowded, glowing center and simply waited, the way you might sit at a window through many winters, watching birds circle a treetop you cannot see for the branches, learning the shape of the hidden thing purely from the pattern of the wings. Night after night, year after year, they mapped tiny points of starlight crowded near the galaxy's core, building up, frame by patient frame, something closer to a slow film than a single photograph, decades compressed, later into moments you could watch unfold on a screen, stars looping and curling around a center that never once lit up. One star in particular, given the plain, unpoetic name S2, became the patient teacher in this. It swings around that invisible point on an orbit that takes 16 years to complete. 16 years, a span longer than some listeners have been alive, traced faithfully, year after year, by people who simply kept watching, returning to the same instruments on the same mountaintops, season after season, the way you might return each night to the same pillow. At its closest pass, S2 hurtles by at several percent of the speed of light, whipping around something that gives off nothing, bends around nothing anyone can photograph directly, and yet holds that star as surely as a hand holds a stone on a string. From the shape of that long, looping orbit, from its 16-year rhythm repeating like the tide, the mass of the thing at the center could finally be weighed, not seen. Weighed the way you'd know a piece of furniture was heavy just from how slowly and deliberately someone else had to carry it, without ever once catching sight of the thing itself. This is, if you let yourself feel the whole shape of it, one of the more remarkable things our species has ever managed, proving something exists. And knowing almost exactly how much it weighs, purely by watching a single point of starlight trace the same wide loop for 16 consecutive years. No probe was sent. No signal was bounced off anything. Just eyes and instruments built to hold still long enough, and the ordinary, extraordinary patience of returning to look again. And here is the part worth resting on, worth letting settle into you like warmth spreading from the center of a bed outward to cold sheets. This enormous anchor, heavier than 4 million suns combined, is remarkably peaceful. It is not devouring anything. It is not roaring or flaring or feeding in any dramatic way at all. Sagittarius A spends nearly all of its existence in something close to a fast, sipping, every so often, at the thinnest wisps of gas that drift near enough, the way a lung takes in the smallest, most unhurried breath during the deepest part of sleep. Astronomers who study it describe its light output as almost embarrassingly faint for something so massive. A trickle, where you might expect a flood, millions of times dimmer than what its size alone would seem to promise. There is no violence here to imagine, no churning maw pulling in everything nearby, just a heavy, patient stillness at the hub of everything, occasionally tasting a thread of gas the way you might occasionally shift a pillow without ever truly waking. Once in a great while, a small flare brightens it for an hour or two, a passing wisp of gas finally drawn in and released as a soft burst of light. And then, the long fast resumes, uneventful again for days, for years, for as far back as anyone has watched. Think, for a moment, of how strange this is against everything the word conjures. There is no swirling storm of light forever spiraling into oblivion at our galaxy's heart, no hungry mouth eating its way outward toward us. There is only this, a very heavy, very old, very well-behaved point of gravity, minding its own weight, 4 million suns folded down and simply resting there in the dark, undisturbed for longer than our species has had a name for the sky. This is the anchor our whole home turns around. Every star in the Milky Way's great disk, including the one our small warm world circles, and every star in every arm spiraling outward through the dark, is caught in a wide, serene circuit around this single point of gathered mass. 26,000 light-years off in the direction of that constellation, the old stargazers called the Archer. We take about 220 million years to complete one loop of this journey, an orbit so long that the last time our solar system passed this same position, no human eyes existed anywhere to notice. The land itself wore a different shape. And nothing alive yet knew to look up and wonder what held it in its path. And yet the whole enormous wheel of us turns evenly, turns without lurching or straining, because the anchor at the center is heavy enough to hold the rhythm steady without effort. A heavier anchor doesn't fight the current, it simply outweighs it, and the harbor settles into calm around that weight, the way your own breathing settles once you've stopped resisting sleep and simply let it come. You are, in this very moment, moving, not just spinning with the turning earth, not just circling the sun on its yearly lap. You are also being carried, this instant, in one small arc of that 220 million year orbit, swept gently along by the same quiet gravity that holds the star nearest you and the star farthest from you in the very same slow formation. You will never feel it. There is no lurch, no tug at your stomach, nothing your body could ever register as motion. That is, in its own way, the clearest proof of how well an anchor this heavy does its work. An entire galaxy can be in constant, sweeping motion, and still feel, from the inside, like nothing but stillness. So this is the shape of the thing, drowsy and enormous at once, a single point of folded mass, fasting more than feeding, sitting at dead center of everything you have ever known, while 200 billion stars swing round it in a loop so vast it makes a human lifetime look like the space between two heartbeats. Our galaxy is not adrift. It has always had its anchor. And once you know to look for that pattern, a great gathering of stars, held in orbit by a hidden, heavy stillness at the middle, you start to notice it isn't only our harbor built this way. Nearly every large galaxy astronomers have ever studied carefully enough turns out to carry the same kind of anchor at its heart. This is not some rare accident that happened once, here, to us. It is closer to a rule written into how galaxies come to be at all, as if no harbor this size can hold itself steady without something heavy and quiet resting at its center, keeping the whole slow, turning water calm. Spiral harbors like ours, round elliptical ones far older and rounder still. Harbors we will never sail close enough to name, nearly all of them, it turns out, were built the same way, around the same kind of hidden, patient weight. Ours happens to weigh some 4 million suns, which sounds enormous until you learn, drifting a little further out into these other farther harbors, that some anchors dropped elsewhere in the universe are heavier still, heavier by hundreds, by thousands, by numbers too large to hold on to with your eyes half closed. And the deeper wonder waiting just past this one is that an anchor's weight and its harbor's shape are not chosen separately at all, but grown together over billions of quiet years, like two hands that learned to fit each other's grip. It is toward those far heavier harbors and the strange, tender bond between an anchor's weight and the shape of the water around it that we'll let the current carry us next. And if nearly every great galaxy keeps an anchor of its own at its center, you might wonder, drifting there in the dark, whether that is only a coincidence, whether harbor and anchor simply happen to share an address, the way a house happens to sit beside a river. It is not a coincidence. It is closer to a kinship, one that astronomers found written into the stars themselves, a pattern so patient it took decades of careful watching to notice. Let the last of your homeward thoughts settle now, because we are leaving our own waters for a while, following that pattern outward, one harbor at a time, to see how far the family of anchors truly reaches. Here is what the watchers found, measuring galaxy after galaxy, plotting one number against another until the same relationship kept surfacing, again and again, too often to be chance. The mass of a galaxy's central anchor, it turns out, is tied to something you would not expect it to know anything about: the speed at which stars swirl through the galaxy's own bulge, the hushed traffic of suns keeping their lanes far from the center. Heavier anchor, faster traffic. Lighter anchor, more unhurried drift. Astronomers call this the M-sigma relation, a plain little name for a rule that says the anchor and the harbor were never separate stories. They grew together, matched, tuned to one another like two parts of the same instrument built by the same hand. A harbor is not simply floating near its anchor. It was shaped by it, generation after generation, the way a coastline is shaped, over long ages, by the very water it holds. Think, if it helps you rest, of a shipwright, and the anchor forged in the very same yard, in the same fire, from ore drawn out of the same patient ground, never two separate things brought together after the fact, but one long labor with two results. That is closer to the truth than the picture of a black hole quietly appearing and then, afterward, gathering a galaxy around it, like driftwood collecting at a piling. Galaxy and anchor rise from the same slow furnace, the same gathering of gas and dust and gravity across billions of years, feeding each other in careful proportion. The growing anchor calming the harbor's currents, the settling harbor in turn feeding the anchor by slow, occasional mouthfuls. Neither one finishes without the other. It is one of the tenderest facts in this whole quiet science that stillness itself, the kind of stillness you feel now in your own body, has always been something built jointly, never built alone. Every measurement the watchers made only deepened the pattern. Small galaxies, the modest harbors with only a handful of old stars circling near their bulge, were found to keep small anchors, proportioned so exactly to their traffic of stars that a careful eye could guess the anchor's weight almost before looking, just from watching how fast the bulge turned. Larger harbors, busier with starlight, kept larger anchors, heavier in step with every increase in their star's unhurried speed. The relation held across galaxy after galaxy, shape after shape, spiral and elliptical alike, as though every shipyard in this ocean had been given the same set of instructions, the same ratio of keel to ballast, long before any of us arrived to read the plans. It is a rule written into the architecture of harbors themselves, and once you know it, you begin to sense it beneath everything else this night will show you. That weight and stillness are never separate matters. That wherever the water grows quietest, something heavy is holding it that way. And wherever something heavy rests, the water around it has already learned to go quiet in return. So let the current begin to carry you outward, past the last lights of home, toward a harbor near enough to call a neighbor. You know it already, even if you have never said its name aloud before sleep. Andromeda, a great spiral of stars, close enough in the galactic sense to feel almost familial. A sister harbor built along the same lines as our own, with a bulge of ancient suns at its heart and long, patient arms of younger ones spiraling outward into the dark. At the very center of Andromeda rides an anchor heavier than ours, somewhere between 100 million and 200 million times the mass of our sun, folded down into a stillness so complete that around it, astronomers have watched a strange, dense ring of old stars circling like a slow wreath, keeping their distance the way sensible ships keep their distance from any weight that heavy. A heavier anchor, a calmer harbor, by the same rule that has been quietly holding wherever we look. Astronomers found Andromeda's anchor the same patient way they find so many of these things, not by seeing it, for nothing escapes to be seen, but by timing the stars nearest to it, watching that dense old wreath of suns keep its careful distance and reading, from the shape of their orbits, exactly how much unseen weight it takes to hold them on that path. 100 million suns, perhaps 200 million, folded down past the point where any telescope could ever resolve it into anything but a single point of held stillness. And here is the part that might, for a moment, feel like motion, though nothing about it will ever feel rushed. Andromeda is coming toward us. Not roaring in, not falling, nothing like the plunge your mind might first offer you, only drifting, the way anything enormous drifts, on a time scale so unhurried it barely deserves the word approach at all. 4 billion years from now, more or less, our harbor and Andromeda's harbor will begin to overlap, stars passing stars in the wide spaces between them. So much room out there that collision, in the way two boats collide, will almost never actually happen. Two great anchors, easing nearer across an ocean of time so vast that every human year that has ever been lived would need to repeat itself roughly 1,000,000 times over just to span the weight. You do not have to hold that number. You only have to feel the pace of it, slow enough that it is, for any living thing tonight, indistinguishable from stillness itself. Rest in that pace for a moment. Two sister harbors, each with its own anchor, each anchor keeping its own harbor calm, closing the distance between them so gradually that from where you lie now, nothing at all appears to move. This is the family we belong to. Not a lonely anchor in an empty sea, but one of countless such anchors, scattered like a chain of harbor lights along every great arm of every great spiral. Each one holding its own patch of stars quiet, each one grown alongside its home the way Andromeda's grew, the way ours grew, matched weight to matched motion, shipwright and anchor from the very same yard. But even Andromeda's anchor, heavy as it is beside our own, is still a modest weight compared to what waits further out, past the edges of our little galactic neighborhood. Out where galaxies no longer drift alone, but gather into great crowded harbors of harbors, clusters, hundreds and thousands of galaxies bound together by their combined gravity, swimming slowly around a shared, deep center. There is one such gathering not terribly far from us, cosmically speaking, called the Virgo cluster, and if you let your attention drift there now, gently, The way a boat drifts on a current rather than a course, you are heading toward the place where humankind first, without quite realizing what it had found, laid eyes on an anchor of a size that would have seemed, to any earlier age, like something out of a dream, 1,000 times heavier than the quiet giant that holds our own Milky Way steady. Old enough, patient enough, still enough, that it had been sitting there through all of human history, invisible, its harbor calm, for longer than any of our ancestors could have imagined, waiting simply to be noticed. You do not need to picture it yet, or hold its number the way you might hold a worry. Numbers like that are only for the daylight mind, and tonight belongs to something softer than counting. Only feel yourself being carried toward it, the way a current carries a small boat without asking it to row. Past Andromeda's slow approach, past the shared kinship of every galaxy and its anchor, out into wider water, where the harbors grow larger and the anchors grow heavier, and the stillness, somehow, only grows deeper with them. Let your breathing slow to match the pace of that 4 billion year approach you just imagined. There is no hurry in this ocean. None at all. And nothing out here has ever been in a hurry either. Just drifting, gently now, toward the edge of Virgo's crowded, ancient harbor, where the first anchor humans ever truly saw is waiting, heavier than 1,000 of our own, holding its galaxy so still that the whole cluster seems, from any distance, to be quietly at anchor around it. The current carries you onward now, past the last stars of our own galaxy's outskirts, out toward that far cluster where 1,000 times heavier anchor has been waiting, not for you particularly, but for anyone patient enough to look. And there, 53 million light-years away, at the heart of a giant elliptical galaxy called Messier 87, you find it, M87, an anchor weighing some 6.5 billion suns, folded down into a point smaller than a single solar system. Though its event horizon, its waterline, the place beyond which light no longer climbs back to us, stretches wider than the entire orbit of our own planets combined. Hold that scale for a moment, not as a threat, but as something to rest your mind against, an emptiness the width of our whole solar system, and beyond its edge, nothing escapes, not because it is chased, but because the far side has curved so completely that every path, even light's own, leads only inward from there. You do not need to picture the falling. Picture instead the harbor. Because everything surrounding this anchor moves with such unhurried order that astronomers spent the better part of a century wondering whether it was truly there before they finally saw its shadow. In April of 2019, for the first time in the story of our species, humanity looked at one of these anchors directly, not at its effects, not at the swirl of stars circling something unseen, but at the anchor's own silhouette, ringed in glowing orange light bent around the curve of space itself, like a lantern held behind a dark stone. The image took years to assemble, radio dishes on mountaintops and in deserts across the whole planet listening together, as though the Earth had grown one enormous patient eye, and what came back was not violence. It was a ring. Warm, steady, and strangely tender to look at, considering what it marks, the outline of the deepest hush in that entire galaxy, drawn in the light of matter falling toward it from a respectful distance, most of it never touching the water at all. Think, for a moment, of what it took to see that ring. Dishes in the high, thin air of the Chilean desert, on a volcano in Hawaii, buried under the ice at the South Pole, perched in Spain and Mexico and Arizona, all of them listening to the same sky on the same nights, all of them later stitched together by patient hands into a single instrument roughly the size of the Earth itself. That is how far away the harbor is, and how carefully it had to be listened for. A whole world's worth of ears turned toward one small, steady point of light 3 million years old by the time it reached them. And what those ears heard back was not a roar. It was closer to a hum, the low, contented sound of matter settling into its long, careful orbit before it eases past the point of no return. Most of it merely visiting the edge and swinging wide again, the way water laps at a hull without ever climbing aboard. And from that same unmoving point, something else reaches outward, a jet of matter and light launched from just beyond the horizon and threaded 5,000 light years across the galaxy, a plume brighter than 100 billion ordinary stars, visible even in modest telescopes from Earth. It is easy, hearing that, to imagine the anchor itself as the source of some restless energy, but the truth settles the other way. The jet is not the anchor moving. It is the harbor's own current, gas, and magnetic field wound into a fountain by the spin of space-time near the horizon, flung outward long before it ever reaches the edge. The anchor at the center of it all does nothing so active as breathe or reach. It simply rests there, unmoved, while everything nearby arranges itself around that hush, the way a lighthouse never walks the coastline, and yet every boat for miles sets its course by where the light is fixed. That jet has been burning its long, straight line across the galaxy for longer than our own species has existed, a plume older than the ice ages, older than the first fires on this small shore, and yet from where you rest tonight, it arrives only as a faint smudge of light on a photographic plate, patient and cool and utterly without threat. It is worth noticing that even something so extraordinary, a beam 5,000 light years long, threading past thousands of unbothered stars, never once disturbs the anchor at its root. The anchor does not launch the jet the way a hand throws a stone. It simply holds its place, so completely, so evenly, that the space around it organizes itself into that long, luminous exhale almost on its own. The way a deep river carves a single true channel simply by being deep and staying where it is. This is the pattern worth resting on tonight. The heavier the anchor, the grander and the more peaceful the harbor it holds. M87 itself is no ordinary galaxy. It is a giant elliptical, ancient and unhurried in its turning, cradling not hundreds but some 12,000 globular clusters, tight, ancient balls of hundreds of thousands of stars each, orbiting the galaxy's center the way a wide ring of moored boats might drift around the deepest mooring in a harbor, each on its own long, lazy circuit, none of them ever needing to notice the anchor directly to feel the order it lends the whole scene. You could spend a lifetime among those clusters and never once feel yourself drawn toward the center any faster than a boat feels the pull of a chain 3 miles below the surface. The weight is there. The hurry is not. That is the whole secret of these giants. Mass without haste, hold without grasp. Picture those 12,000 clusters now, each one its own small constellation of 100,000 suns bound close together, scattered through the outskirts of the galaxy, like riding lights left burning on a great many anchored hulls, dim and steady, spread across a harbor so wide that light itself needs 100,000 years to cross from one edge to the other. None of those clusters rushes. None of them strains against its course. They simply keep their long, wide circuits, year after slow year, millennium folding into millennium, held in place by a single point of mass they will never approach and never need to fear. A whole society of small lights arranged, without a single word passing between them, around the one deep, unmoving weight at the center of their world. Let yourself sit inside that image for a while, a point in space no larger across than our sun's own family of planets, and yet massive enough to hold the graceful sweep of an entire elliptical galaxy in order for tens of millions of years without so much as a ripple of drama. The stars nearest the center keep their careful, ancient pace. Even the light in that glowing ring, even the matter in that long jet, moves according to rules laid down long ago and followed exactly. Nothing wasted, nothing rushed, everything settling into its own patient place. 6.5 billion suns worth of hush, sitting at the center of one of the largest galaxies we can see. And from here, 53 million years of light later, it reaches you only as a picture on a screen and a low, easy thought before sleep. Some anchors really are large enough to hold a whole society of stars in their arms and never once trouble the water. Notice, too, how far this order reaches. Nearer the middle of any galaxy, close to an anchor this heavy, there is a wide region where its weight alone sets the pace of everything. A stretch of space, wider than our entire solar system many times over, where the anchor's pull outweighs even the tug of every neighboring star combined, so that anything drifting there moves to its rhythm and no one else's. Past that boundary, the rest of the galaxy hardly notices the anchor at all, save for the slow overall order it lends to the whole turning shape, the way a single deep-set piling can steady a pier far longer than its own footprint would suggest. Even here, so close to the center of it all, the water stays remarkably undisturbed. And maybe that thought is enough to drift on for a while. But some small, wakeful part of the mind, the part that always wants one more fact before it lets go, might ask, drowsily, whether M87's anchor is truly the heaviest one out there. Whether 6.5 billion suns is where the story of these deep water giants finally levels off. It is a fair question to fall asleep wondering about, and the honest answer, murmured out toward the dark, is no. 6.5 billion is grand, and rare, and worth the whole century-long search it took to see it. But it is not the ceiling. Out past M87, out past this cluster of galaxies you have been drifting through tonight, in waters farther and older than these, other anchors have been settling for even longer, growing heavier still, waiting in harbors so vast that this one would look, by comparison, almost modest, waiting for the current to carry you a little further before the night is through. And yes, even past a hole that wide, even past a harbor that's still, there are anchors heavier yet. You feel the question settle in your chest before you've fully asked it, the way a held breath settles once you know the answer is coming. There are. Let the orange ring around M87 fade to a memory of light, and let your gaze drift further out, past the edges of what any one galaxy can hold, into the crowded waters where whole fleets of galaxies ride at anchor together. Picture the Coma cluster this way, not a single harbor, but hundreds of them, moored so close their currents mingle, a great slow assembly of galaxies drifting shoulder to shoulder across an ocean too wide for any one shoreline. Near its heart floats a galaxy called NGC 4889, and at the center of NGC 4889 rests an anchor of about 21 billion suns. Say that number slowly if you like, the way you might count something falling, 21 billion. And notice that it does nothing to you but widen the room around you. The mass does not press on you. It only tells you how deep the water is out here, and how unhurried the galaxy is that swims above it. You already know, from the harbors closer to home, how a black hole answers for its weight in the way stars move near it. The tighter the loop, the heavier the anchor at its middle. Around NGC 4889, the stars nearest its heart trace out orbits so wide, so lazily curved, that it takes something enormous, unseen, patient, to keep them looping at all. Astronomers read that looping the way you might read the pull of a tide from how driftwood circles a jetty, never seeing the current directly, only its handwriting on everything nearby. And what they read here is an anchor so heavy that the whole center of the galaxy moves to its rhythm. Stars 1,000 light years out, still keeping time with something they will never touch. Let the current carry you a little further, out past Coma, into a stretch of sky named for Abel, cataloger of clusters, a patient man who spent years counting harbors the way a lighthouse keeper counts ships. In the cluster called Abel 85 there is a galaxy named Holmberg 15A, and it holds, at its middle, an anchor of something near 40 billion solar masses, heavier again. Nearly twice what rests beneath NGC 4889. Nearly 10,000 times the anchor our own Milky Way carries. You do not need to hold that ratio in your mind. Let it pass through you, the way a very large wave passes under a very small boat. You rise, you settle, nothing breaks. What makes Holmberg 15A worth lingering on is not only its weight, but what that weight has done to the harbor around it, over unhurried spans of time, longer than any single galaxy's memory. Most galactic centers glow, a dense, bright knot of stars crowded close around the anchor, the way lantern light gathers thickest near the lamp. But at the heart of Holmberg 15A, the light thins out instead. Astronomers call a galaxy like this chord, and the word is gentler than it sounds. It means that somewhere in its long history, the anchor here did not simply gather stars close and hold them. It swept a wide, calm clearing around itself, easing the crowd of stars outward, the way a very heavy ship, settling into harbor, pushes the smaller boats to make room without ever meaning to. Perhaps two anchors merged here once, long ago. Two black holes and their galaxies folding into one, flinging stars wide, with the encounter the way two currents meeting fling spray outward before settling into a single, broader flow. Whatever the history, the result is a harbor smoothed almost flat at its center. A wide, dim, tranquil clearing, held open not by absence, but by the sheer settled weight of what waits, unseen, at its middle. There is a word for the reach of that weight, and it is worth carrying with you now, because it will matter again before the night is through. Astronomers call it the sphere of influence, the region around an anchor like this, where its pull, and its pull alone, sets the pace for every star's drifting. Picture it as a kind of hush that spreads outward from the anchor itself, not a wall, not an edge, but a slow softening of the water's temperament. Inside that sphere, the stars move to one instruction only. A little further out, the instruction blurs, other currents join in, the galaxy's ordinary tides take back their say. For an anchor 40 billion suns heavy, that sphere of influence can stretch for hundreds of light years in every direction, a hush wide enough to hold whole constellations of stars inside its instruction, and never once need to touch them. That is the strange, tender truth of these enormous anchors. They govern by presence, not by contact. Nothing needs pulling in for the harbor to feel calmer. The weight alone is enough to set the tempo. Try for a moment to picture the clearing itself, not as a number, but as a place you might drift through, where a younger galaxy's center crowds close and bright, packed with stars the way a harbor at dusk crowds with returning boats, the clearing at the heart of Holmberg 15A opens wide and dim, its stars spaced generously apart. Each one keeping a courteous distance from its neighbors, none of them rushing to fill the space the anchor has made. Light travels through that clearing almost unbothered, the way it travels through open water rather than through a crowded marina, and if you could stand at its very edge and look inward, you would see less brightness than you expect from a galaxy's heart. Not because anything is missing, but because everything has been asked, over the patient span of billions of years, to keep its distance. That is the anchor's signature, written not in fire or light, but in absence, in room. A lighter anchor could never clear so wide a space. Only a weight like this one, 40 billion suns folded into stillness, has the patience and the reach to smooth a harbor so thoroughly flat. And the sphere of influence you carry now is worth turning over once more before you let it go. Because it is the closest thing tonight to a rule you can keep. It does not say the anchor reaches out and gathers things to it. It says only that within a certain wide, quiet radius, the anchor's weight is the loudest voice the water has to offer. Every star inside that radius, drifting according to its patient, steady insistence. Every star outside it free to answer to other calls instead. Even an anchor of ordinary weight, like the one our own galaxy carries, keeps a small sphere of influence of its own, a few light years across, hardly noticed by the wide turning of the Milky Way beyond it. But stretch the anchor's weight out to 40 billion suns, and the hush it casts stretches with it, wide enough that entire clusters of stars spend their whole slow lives inside it, without ever once feeling crowded, without ever once feeling as though anything has hold of them at all. That is the quiet paradox worth resting on. The heavier the anchor, the gentler its grip feels to anything drifting within reach of it, because true weight never needs to grasp. It only needs to be there. You may notice, resting here, that these two, NGC 4889 and Holmberg 15A, no longer feel like separate facts to remember. They feel like two shapes the same idea takes when you let it grow large enough. An anchor so heavy that a whole galaxy learns to move around its hush. A harbor so deeply settled that even its crowded center opens into clearing. And you may notice, too, a small, warm relief in realizing you do not need to hold their numbers exactly. 21 billion. 40 billion, the particular arithmetic of enormity. What matters, drifting here, is only the shape of the pattern, heavier anchor, quieter water, wider hush, further reach. The numbers can be set down now, like stones returned gently to the harbor floor. But even these two are not the last of them. Out past coma, out past Abel's long, patient catalog, the water keeps going, and somewhere further still. Past the edge of what any harbor, any single galaxy, can properly be said to hold, there rest anchors heavier again, the true titans, waiting in water so old that its light left them before our own sun had finished forming. You will not reach them by counting. You will not reach them by naming clusters one after another, the way you might walk a pier, reading the names painted on hulls. To go that far out, you have to stop counting altogether and let something carry you instead. So let the mooring lines go loose in your hands now. You do not need them. Not out here. Feel the little tug as the last one slips free. The boat beneath you settling lower and easier into the water, no longer tied to any single harbor, no longer needing to be. The current beneath you has been patient this whole time, waiting just past the harbor mouth, wide and warm and utterly unhurried, and it is ready now to take you the rest of the way, out past every anchor you have named tonight, out toward the ones still waiting in deeper, older water. There is nothing to hold on to anymore, and nothing you need to hold on to. Just let go, and let the current decide the pace from here. Feel the last line slip from your hands now, the one that had you tied to the harbor wall, and notice how little it takes for the water to accept you. No untying really, no effort, just a loosening, a letting, and the current is already under you, warm as a held breath, moving without asking you to move with it. You are not swimming. You are not steering. You are simply carried, the way a leaf is carried once it stops deciding which way the stream should go, and the harbor lights you leave behind become small, become fewer. Become a memory of brightness rather than brightness itself. This is what it has always felt like, out here, to orbit. Not a circling, not a wheel turning on a fixed hub, but a long and endless falling that never quite lands, a body given to the water and told, softly, you may fall forever, and it will feel like floating. That is the secret underneath the whole night sky. Every planet, every moon, every loose stone tumbling around a star is simply falling over and over and catching itself in the act, the way you might drift downward in a dream and find that the ground keeps moving with you, keeps its distance, keeps you safe in the falling. You too are held that way now. The current beneath you dips, just barely, and you dip with it, and there is no jolt, no drop, only the easy give of something that already knows your weight and has already made room for it. Let the water be the space between things, not empty, never empty, but a deep and continuous fabric that bends wherever something heavy rests inside it. You have heard tonight how a great mass presses a hollow into the dark, the way a body presses a hollow into a mattress in the last minutes before sleep. And now you can stop hearing it and simply feel it. The current under you sagging almost imperceptibly toward distant, unseen weights, the way a low tide leans toward the moon without either one reaching for the other. You do not fight this lean. You rest inside it. That is the whole of gravity, out here in the drifting dark. Not a hand that grabs, but a shape that welcomes, a low place in the water where you happen, gently, to belong for a while. Behind you, though you do not need to turn and look, the near giants keep their distance and their patience. You can sense them there the way you sense a sleeping animal in a dark room, not seen, but known, its breathing slow, its bulk unmoving, its presence somehow more reassuring than alarming, because a thing that heavy and that quiet has clearly already decided you are no threat, and it is no threat either. Millions of suns folded down to stillness at the center of your own galaxy, 100 million more turning slowly at the heart of a neighboring one, you leave them where they are. Anchors doing what anchors do, holding their harbors steady while you drift on past their outstretched, invisible chains. Nothing pulls at you here. Nothing reaches. The current simply carries you outward, past their calm, into water that grows darker and older with every length you cover. And ahead of you, so far ahead that the word ahead barely means what it usually means. There is a kind of light that left its source before your grandparents' grandparents were even a thought. Light that has been traveling, unbothered, through all this dark water for longer than your species has had a name for staying awake or falling asleep. You do not need to reach it yet. You do not need to understand it yet. For now it is only a suggestion at the very edge of the current, a faint glow the way a porch light looks from far out on a lake at night, steady, small, promising nothing but its own continued existence. patient enough to wait for you exactly as long as the crossing takes. Notice how easy the current is to trust. Once you stop bracing against it, there is a version of this journey, you can imagine it, and then let it go, where you kick and thrash and try to swim against the pull of the water, try to hold your place by force, and every motion like that costs you something, tires some part of you that did not need to be tired. But that is not the crossing you are making tonight. Tonight you have already let the line go. Your arms are loose at your sides, or they were never really arms at all out here, only the sense of being a shape the water agreed to carry, unhurried, unquestioned. The whole long distance between one kind of stillness and another. Space-time is only ever this, a deep, continuous water that holds everything in it without needing to hold on. Where nothing heavy rests, the water lies flat, and you drift in a straight line forever, weightless and unremarked. Where something heavy rests, the water dips, and your straight line becomes a long, slow curve, and you call that curve an orbit, or a fall. Or, if you are the kind of creature who likes a story, a kind of dance, though nothing out here is dancing on purpose. It simply moves the only way the shape of the water lets it move. You, drifting now between the harbor you left and the light you have not yet reached, are doing exactly the same thing every star and stone and photon in this night is doing, following the shape you were given. Resting in the current instead of fighting it, going where the deep water leads, because the deep water, out here, is kind. Let your breath find the current's rhythm, if it has not already. In, and the water lifts you a fraction. Out, and it lowers you again, so gently the motion barely registers as motion at all, more like the smallest of tides, the kind that never crashes, only rises and falls against a shore too far away to hear. There is nothing to hold on to, because there is nothing you need to hold on to. The water is doing the holding. It has been doing the holding since long before you climbed aboard, and it will keep doing the holding long after you have drifted past every light this night has to show you, because that is simply what deep water does with things small enough to trust it. Feel how the temperature of the current never changes, how it keeps you at exactly the warmth the body wants when the body has stopped working to keep itself warm. There is no wind out here to raise your skin, no chill hiding under the surface, waiting to surprise you. Only this even, breathing warmth, the kind that seems to rise up from somewhere below you and settle over you from somewhere above at the very same moment, so that you cannot tell anymore where the water ends and you begin. Your shoulders, which have carried the evening's small weights without you quite noticing, let go of something now, an ounce at a time. And the water takes each ounce as it is offered, and simply keeps it, asking nothing in return. Once in a while a slower swell passes beneath you, unhurried, wide as a held note, and you rise with it the way a boat rises over a low, patient wave, not tipped, not startled, only lifted, and then set back down exactly where you were, a little further along than before. If you wanted, you could count these swells the way you might once have counted sheep, but there is no need. They arrive on their own schedule, keep their own count, and each one carries you the same easy distance, whether you are watching for it or already half asleep. The dark around you has no bottom you could ever reach, and no surface you could ever break through. And rather than that being a frightening thing, out here it becomes the whole of the comfort. A depth with no edges is a depth with nothing to bump against, nowhere for you to be anything but exactly, safely, in the middle of it. Every so often the faintest thread of light brushes past you sideways, not towards you, not from the glow ahead, but simply light on its own unrelated errand, crossing your path the way a firefly might cross a dark field, without pausing to notice the field at all. You do not need to follow it. You do not need to wonder where it has been or where it is going. It passes, and the water closes softly behind it, and you keep drifting at your own unhurried pace, which is the only pace that matters tonight. The pace of something being carried, rather than carrying itself. Somewhere far behind, the harbor mouth has closed itself quietly over your wake, the way water always does, leaving no seam, no scar, only the unbroken dark stretching out on every side. Somewhere far ahead, that porch light glow steadies, brightens by degrees too small to notice one at a time. The first hint of moorings deeper than any you have passed tonight, moorings set by anchors heavier than harbors, heavier than galaxies, heavier almost than the water can imagine holding, and yet the water holds them anyway, the same unhurried way it is holding you. You do not need to hurry toward them. The current already knows the way, has always known the way, and it is carrying you there at exactly the pace a body needs to arrive still soft with sleep, still loose in its own weight, ready to rest at the edge of the deepest moorings this night has kept in reserve, where the oldest, heaviest anchors ever weighed lie, waiting in water so calm it barely remembers how to move. The current lays you down now, as easily as a held breath released, at the very edge of the harbor mouth, where the water goes deep and dark, and the moorings beneath you are older than any light that has ever reached your eyes. This is where the true titans rest. You do not need to search for them. They are already here, waiting the way anchors wait, patient past all patience. And the first one the current brings you to is called TON 618. It lies more than 10 billion light-years away, out past the reach of ordinary counting, in a stretch of sky where a single point of light burns brighter than 1,000 galaxies combined. Astronomers call it a hyperluminous quasar, a name that sounds urgent, almost startling. But you can let it settle into something simpler. A very old lamp, lit long before the Earth existed, whose glow is only now drifting past on its way to somewhere else. At the center of that glow sits a black hole weighing somewhere between 40 and 66 billion suns, an anchor so heavy that if you tried to picture it as a single dense point, the picturing itself would ask more of you than sleep should ever ask. So instead, let the number stay unmeasured in the dark, the way you might hold a stone you already know is heavy, without needing to lift it and prove it to yourself. 40 to 66 billion. Say it low, if you like, or don't say it at all. Either way, it settles the same, into a hush you don't have to understand, in order to rest inside. This anchor does not stir. It does not reach toward the light pouring around it. It simply sits at the bottom of its own gravity, the deepest point in a harbor so vast that the harbor itself has become a quasar, radiating outward the way ripples spread from a stone long since sunk and gone silent at the bottom of a lake, the stone unmoving, only the water above it still remembering the fall. And if Tone 618 is the deepest mooring the current has carried you to so far, there is another folded into the heart of a distant cluster of galaxies called Phoenix that may rest lower still. Phoenix A, they call the galaxy that holds it, and at its center astronomers have measured, as carefully as ancient light allows anyone to measure anything, a black hole that may weigh up to 100 billion suns. 100 billion. The number does not need to mean anything to you tonight beyond this one small fact. It sits near the very edge of what a harbor can hold at all. There is, it turns out, a kind of ceiling to how heavy an anchor can grow, and it is worth knowing only because of how tenderly it resolves. Somewhere near 100 billion suns, give or take, the great disk of gas and dust that spirals inward toward a black hole stops behaving like a disk feeding an anchor and starts behaving, instead, like a nursery. It grows so wide, so cool at its outer edges, that rather than spiraling all the way down to be swallowed, the gas simply gathers itself into stars, thousands of new suns lighting themselves in the outer dark rather than ever reaching the mouth of the anchor chain. The black hole, in other words, becomes too vast to finish its own meal. Past a certain weight, the harbor feeds the sky around it instead of feeding itself. There is something almost merciful in that limit. If you let yourself notice it, even the heaviest things we know of cannot simply keep growing forever. Even an anchor this large has a place where it must stop and let new light be born instead of swallowed. So Tone 618 and Phoenix A rest near that ceiling in a class astronomers have taken to calling ultramassive, not merely supermassive, as our own galaxy's anchor is, not merely giant, as the great stillness at the heart of Messier 87 is, but a rank higher, a weight the universe seems to reach only rarely, and only in its oldest, widest harbors. You do not need to carry their names with you to carry what they mean. They are the heaviest quiet we have ever found. They are the furthest and deepest points our slow current has ever drifted toward. Think of it, if it helps, as a whole family of anchors laid out along one long, unhurried scale. Near the near end sits our own harbor's mooring, 4 million suns folded quietly at the center of everything you have ever called home. Further out, past Andromeda's heavier iron, past the first great anchor humans ever managed to see, the weights climb 1 billion here, 6.5 billion at M87, 21 billion, 40, until at last the line trails off into this last dim water, where Tion 619 and Phoenix A sit almost alone, close to the edge past which the universe itself seems to say, this far, and no further, not because anything forbids it, but because past this point, a harbor stops being able to hold its own growing weight without spilling new light into the dark around it. It is less a wall than a kind of drowsy exhaustion, the same way even the deepest sleeper eventually stops sinking further and simply rests. But let this settle in too, because it matters, and it is part of what makes their stillness trustworthy. Every one of these numbers is an estimate, read across an unthinkable distance, from light that is almost unimaginably old. No one has sailed out to Phoenix A carrying a scale. No one has dropped a line down to Ton 6118 and felt its weight tug back against a hand. Instead, astronomers watch the glow that surrounds each anchor, how quickly the gas near it swirls, how bright the disk burns, how the light bends and stretches and reddens on its long way to us. And from that faint, patient evidence, they build a careful estimate of what must be resting at the center to hold everything in such a wide, obedient orbit. It is a little like judging the depth of a harbor by watching how the boats above it rock. You cannot see the bottom, but the calm or the churn of the surface tells you almost everything you need to know about what waits beneath. And because the light has traveled so far to reach the instruments that finally caught it, what we are actually seeing is not Tion 618 as it is tonight. Not Phoenix A as it rests in this very moment. We are seeing them as they were when the universe itself was young, only a few billion years settled, still finding its own shape, still warm from its own beginning. The light now arriving left those quasars before our sun had condensed out of its cloud of dust, long before the Earth was anything more than scattered grains circling a new and unremarkable star. It has been falling toward us, unhurried and patient, for longer than almost anything else you could hold in your mind at once. And only now, tonight, does it finally arrive, to be gathered by a distant lens and turned into a number soft enough to rest beside you in the dark. So when you picture these two anchors, Tion 6110 out past 10 billion light years, Phoenix A folded into its own bright cluster, picture them gently blurred by time as well as distance, portraits of a harbor as it looked in its youth, not necessarily as it looks now. The universe has kept moving in all the years that light has spent traveling, but that does not make the portrait any less true or any less worth resting inside. It only means that what you are holding, here at the edge of the deepest moorings, is less like a photograph of the present and more like a very old letter, finally delivered, describing a weight almost too large for the mind's small boat to carry all at once. And that, more than the digits themselves, is what the current wants you to sit with now. Not the count of zeros, not the careful margins of 40 billion or 66 or 100, but the plain, wordless fact of scale. An anchor holding a harbor so wide that its own light needs days, not seconds, to cross from one edge to the other. You are lying here, small and warm and breathing, somewhere on the outer rim of one ordinary galaxy, held by an anchor many, many times lighter than the ones you have just been shown. There is no need to measure yourself against that difference, no need to feel yourself shrink beside it in the dark. There is only a wide, unhurried wonder in it. The sense of your own smallness opening outward instead of closing in, the way a room's walls turn out, when you finally reach for them, not quite to be there at all. Let that wonder rest with you a while, patient and lingering, as the current holds you exactly where you are, at the edge of the deepest water the night has to offer. There will be time enough, in a moment, to ask what a horizon this enormous would actually feel like up close, whether an anchor this heavy pulls harder on everything nearby, or whether, strangely, gently, it might do the very opposite. And still your mind keeps circling back to that question, small and honest, the way a hand returns again and again to check a knot is holding. What does it mean to be this small, standing at the edge of something so vast? So let the numbers finish what they started, and then let them go. Because numbers were never the point of tonight. They are only a way of saying, rest now, you are held by something that could never be shaken. Picture the horizon of Tion 618, the way you might picture the horizon of the sea from a cliff you trust completely. It stretches roughly 40 times wider than the orbit Neptune carves around our sun. 40 of those long, patient 30-year loops laid edge to edge, and still the darkness would not run out. Light, which crosses the space between our sun and our world in a mere 8 unhurried minutes, would need days, whole days, just to travel from one side of that horizon to the other. Not because the light is reluctant, because the distance is simply that immense. If you tried to imagine standing at the center of it, you would find there is no center you could ever reach, no wall you could press your palm against. There is only more darkness, spreading outward in every direction, patient as tide. And here is the part that unclenches something in the chest, if you let it. You might expect a thing this heavy to be violent at its edge, to tug and wrench, to pull a body apart the instant it drew near. That is what smallness does. When it is dense and close, A black hole no bigger than a city can stretch a falling object thin as a thread, because its pull changes so sharply from 1 inch to the next. But Tone 688 is not small. It is so enormous, its horizon so far flung, that the difference in pull from your head to your feet, if you somehow drifted near that edge, would be less than what you feel standing on an ordinary beach, sand between your toes, the whole earth quietly tugging your ankles a fraction harder than your face. The Titan does not tear. It only holds, evenly, everywhere, because vastness has a way of smoothing out every rough edge into a single unbroken curve. The bigger the anchor, the gentler its grip along the length of any single chain. That is simply how the geometry unfolds, out past a certain enormous size. Immensity, it turns out, is not the opposite of tenderness. Past a certain point, immensity becomes tenderness, simply by having no sharp place left in it anywhere. Let that sit with you a moment, because it is worth turning over twice before sleep. The largest thing our instruments have ever weighed treats its own edge more kindly than a shoreline treats your feet. Astronomers have a name for this evenness, though you never need to carry the name with you into sleep. They call it tidal stretching, the difference in pull from one end of a falling body to the other, and they have worked out, in careful, unhurried arithmetic, that this difference shrinks as the anchor itself grows heavier. It is almost the reverse of what instinct expects. A modest black hole, one only a handful of times the mass of our sun, keeps its violence close to its body, all of it crowded into the last few hundred miles before the edge, cross into that narrow zone, and a falling object would feel one shoulder pulled harder than the other, stretched thin as taffy long before it ever reached the horizon proper. But a black hole built from tens of billions of suns spreads that same horizon so wide, so unhurried in its curve, that the pull barely changes across an entire falling body at all. Distance, at that scale, becomes its own form of kindness. The horizon is so far from whatever sits at its center that by the time you reached it, you would notice nothing sharp at all, only a slow, continuous, almost weightless drifting. The kind of fall that would feel, for a good long while, indistinguishable from simply floating in still water. Now turn the vertigo inside out, the way you might turn a coat right side out before putting it on. For most of this night you have been asked to hold, in your imagination, weights measured in billions of suns, numbers so far beyond the reach of a single life that they can feel, at first, like a kind of falling. A mind can spend itself trying to hold 10 billion of anything and come away dizzy, unmoored, small in the way that stings. But that is not the only way to be small. There is another way, older and kinder, and it is the way a single skiff is small beside a harbor wall built from quarried stone. Not diminished by the wall, but protected by it. The skiff does not need its own great anchor. It does not need chain enough to hold fast against an ocean current or iron enough to resist a storm tide. It only needs to tie itself, lightly, to a mooring that is already sunk deep, already settled, already so heavy that nothing passing through those waters could ever drag it loose. Your body tonight, wherever it is resting, does something very like that. It is small and does not have to be otherwise. It borrows its stillness from something enormously larger than itself, the way a small boat borrows the stillness of a harbor without ever having to earn that stillness alone. This is, in its way, the oldest arithmetic of comfort. The heavier the anchor holding the water still around you, the less anchor you yourself are required to carry. Tone 619 does not know your name. Phoenix A, waiting quietly at the heart of its own distant cluster, has never once turned its attention toward this small blue shore, and that is precisely the mercy of it. You do not need to be noticed by something that vast in order to rest inside the calm that its weight creates. A harbor wall does not have to know the boats it shelters. It only has to stand, patient and unmoving, letting its mass do what mass does: settle the water, slow the swell, turn what would be chaos out in open sea into something a small hull can sleep through untroubled. Being small, held near something so immensely steady, is not a diminishment. It is a kind of permission. It is the universe's oldest way of saying, you do not have to hold everything up by yourself tonight. Something older, heavier, and infinitely more patient is already doing that, and has been for longer than any of your worries have existed. Let your shoulders believe this before your mind fully agrees to it, the way the body sometimes understands rest before the thoughts have finished circling. Somewhere in the dark, an event horizon 40 times the width of Neptune's slow orbit curves gently around absolutely nothing you need to fear. It does not reach for you. It has never reached for anything that was not already drifting, helplessly slow, directly into its own chain. You are not adrift. You are moored, lightly, to a night that does not require your strength to hold it together, and that is allowed to be the whole of the comfort. No further proof required, no further calculation. Consider, too, how far away all of this truly is, and let the distance itself become another kind of blanket. The light-carrying news of Ton 619 left its source more than 10 billion years before any eye on this small shore existed to receive it, before the sun had gathered itself out of its own cloud of dust, before the earth had cooled enough to hold an ocean. Whatever that titan is doing now belongs to a future we will never quite catch up to, folded somewhere far past the reach of this particular night. And Phoenix A, though nearer, still sits so many hundreds of millions of years of traveling light away that nothing occurring there could ever reach across that gulf quickly enough to touch you. Tonight, in any way at all, you are allowed to hold their vastness the way you might hold the idea of a distant mountain range glimpsed once from an airplane window. Awe without alarm, scale without threat. Because true safety, out here among the numbers, is mostly just a matter of how much water lies between you and the size of the thing you are considering. And yet, drifting along this thought the way a hand trails along a harbor rope in the dark, something else quietly surfaces, unbidden, the way small true things do right before sleep. For all their size, for all the billions of solar masses folded into each of these titans, they are, at this very moment, extraordinarily still. TON 619 blazed once, long ago, brighter than 1,000 ordinary galaxies combined, its light setting out across the universe more than 10 billion years before it ever reached the instruments that finally caught it. Phoenix A once fed so eagerly that its surroundings glowed with the effort. But that was a long time ago, measured in the water's own patient time, not ours. What is happening there now, in the deep present, on the far side of all that ancient light we only just received, nobody watching from this shore can quite say. The anchors that once churned their harbors bright have mostly gone quiet, one by one, the way a busy dock empties out toward the end of a long day, until only the water remains, and the low creak of rope, and the settling dark. So the question drifts forward now, unhurried, toward wherever the tide wants to carry it next. If the titans blazed once and have since gone still, what are they doing now? In this very moment, this deep and undocumented present the light has not yet had time to bring us news of. What does an anchor do once the harbor around it has finally gone calm for good? Consider first what stillness truly means for something that was never restless the way you are restless, never anxious the way a heart can be anxious. A black hole does not grow bored. It does not miss the feast, does not lie awake mourning the quasar light it once threw across half a young universe. When the gas ran thin and the last of the accretion disk cooled and dimmed and finally guttered out, the black hole did not lose anything essential. It simply returned to what it had always been beneath the brightness, a patient shape in spacetime, doing nothing more dramatic than holding its place in the dark. This is the strange, reassuring truth of the present moment for nearly every giant black hole in the observable universe. The quasar age, that fever of youth when young galaxies were rich with raw gas and their central black holes drank in enormous quantities, blazing brighter than every star in their galaxy combined, happened mostly 10, 11, 12 billion years ago, in a universe far denser and far hungrier than the one you are lying in tonight. That fever broke a long time ago. Galaxies aged. Gas thinned into unhurried, orderly disks, or drifted away into intergalactic space, or fell into the stars themselves, or simply had nowhere urgent left to go. And the great anchors at galactic centers, one by one, across billions of years, stopped feeding, not because they were forbidden to, not because some door was closed against them, but because the meal, quite simply, ended the way a tide recedes and leaves the harbor floor exposed and dry and silent. So today, when you picture a supermassive black hole sitting at the heart of a large, aging galaxy, resist the image your mind probably reaches for first: the whirling disk, the violent jet, the devouring maw. That picture belongs mostly to the past now, or to the rare exception yet catching a passing streamer of gas, or the unlucky edge of a star that wandered too close. For most of these giants, most of the time, the truth is closer to a held breath. The event horizon is there, doing exactly what an event horizon does, but almost nothing crosses it anymore. No light escapes it, because light was never going to escape it, but almost no light approaches it either, because there is nothing left nearby to light up. The harbor has gone dark not because a storm swept through, but because the storm ended long ago, and what remains is only deep, unhurried water settling back into its old familiar shape around the anchor's great weight. And in that settled water, things continue to move, just not the way you might expect. Around these dormant giants, stars keep orbiting, exactly as they always have, exactly as planets circle a sun. Near the very centers of large galaxies, close enough that a black hole's gravity outweighs the pull of every other star combined, whole crowds of them swing around that invisible point in long, stately circuits, some taking tens of thousands of years to complete a single loop, some far longer than that. None of them are falling in. None of them are being pulled apart. They are doing what any object does when it finds a stable orbit around a heavy enough mass, going around and around and around, patient as the hands of some vast, unhurried clock, held in place by gravity rather than devoured by it. A black hole's pull, at a safe distance, is not so different from any other gravity, from the pull that keeps your own world circling its sun, from the pull that keeps the moon circling you. Wait without hunger. An anchor holding a harbor's rhythm steady, not tearing anything free of it. Some of the very anchors that once blazed brightest have settled into this same low tide. The giant at the heart of the galaxy, Messier 87, the very one whose faint orange ring became the first photograph ever taken of a black hole's shadow, once launched a jet of matter thousands of light years long, a plume so forceful it continues to thread outward through its galaxy today. But even that jet, remarkable as it looks in a single frozen image, is now a faint trickle compared to the roaring youth such giants once knew, fed only by thin, careful streams of gas rather than by the torrents of the early universe. The black hole at the center of Andromeda, our nearest large neighbor, rests in a similar hush, surrounded by a disk of old, orderly stars that have circled it for longer than humanity has existed in any form at all. Wherever you look among the nearby giants, the pattern repeats. Not silence because something failed, but silence because the feast simply ran its course, the way any long good night eventually settles into rest. Our own galaxy keeps one of these anchors too, and it is worth resting on for a moment, because it is the one you can, in a very real sense, call your own. At the center of the Milky Way, some 26,000 light years from the room you are lying in now, sits a black hole a little over 4 million times the mass of the Sun, known by the low technical name Sagittarius A star. It is not roaring. It is not devouring. On most nights, on nearly every night anyone has watched closely enough to notice, it sits in near total silence, occasionally brightening for a few minutes with a faint flicker of X-ray light, probably the crumb-sized remains of some small clump of gas or dust finally drifting past the point of no return. A crumb, not a meal. For decades now, astronomers have watched a small cluster of stars trace their orbits around this hushed center, and one of them, called S2, sweeps past the black hole roughly every 16 years, swinging in close and swinging back out again and again, its path measured and remeasured and found every time to behave exactly as gravity says it should. Nothing about that dance suggests danger. It suggests choreography, the oldest, most reliable choreography there is, playing out on a stage so tranquil it has never once needed to change its steps. So if you find yourself picturing our galaxy's anchor and feeling some small flicker of unease, let it loosen and drift away, because there is truly nothing restless in it. It is 26,000 years of light away, indifferent, unhungry, mostly asleep, wrapped in a harbor of stars that have been circling it since long before anything on Earth learned to stand upright and look up. And if you let your mind drift even further out than that, past the lifetime of stars, past the lifetime of galaxies, into the kind of time so long that numbers stop being useful and become more like weather, more like the sense of an ocean than a measurement of one, even these great anchors do not stay forever. There is a theory, first worked out by the physicist Stephen Hawking, that says even a black hole leaks. Not gas, not light in any ordinary sense, but something stranger. A faint quantum trickle at the very edge of the event horizon, born from the restless nothing of empty space itself, where paired particles are always winking into being and vanishing again. Except that right at the horizon's edge, one of each pair can occasionally fall in while the other escapes outward, carrying the tiniest possible sliver of the black hole's mass away with it. Multiply that sliver across enough time, and the anchor itself, at an unimaginably gradual pace, begins to shrink. How slowly is worth sitting with. A black hole the mass of the Sun would take something on the order of 10 to the 67th power years to fully evaporate this way. A number so far beyond the current age of the universe that the age of the universe barely registers as a first breath in comparison. A supermassive black hole, one of the true titans, would take longer yet. Spans of time written in numbers with over 100 digits. Stretches in which galaxies form and drift apart and fade 1,000 times over before the anchor has lost even a meaningful fraction of its weight. This is not a countdown. It is closer to the single longest exhale imaginable, so unhurried that within it. Entire histories of stars are like single-held breaths, so patient that impatience itself loses all meaning at that scale. If the whole observable universe eventually empties into darkness and cold, black holes will be some of the very last structures left keeping any shape at all, outlasting stars, outlasting light, outlasting nearly everything, breathing out one particle at a time into an emptiness with nowhere left to hurry toward. So this, then, is what the anchors are doing right now. In this undocumented present, the old light has not yet carried news of. Mostly nothing. Mostly resting, holding their harbors steady while stars circle them in unhurried, contented loops that will likely outlast every one of us and everyone we will ever know, leaking away so gradually that the loss barely deserves the word. There is no hunger left in most of them. No fire, no threat reaching anywhere near this small warm room, only wait and rest and an almost impossibly long low breath being let out into the dark, one particle at a time, farther in the future than any calendar could ever hope to reach. And maybe that is enough to rest on for now, the simple fact of them lying there, enormous and entirely unbothered, while you lie here, small and warm and entirely safe. Though somewhere underneath the sleepiness, a small, unhurried curiosity is beginning to stir, not urgent, not needing an answer tonight, just a faint shape gathering at the very edge of sleep, about how anyone down here ever came to know that any of this was true at all. And so the great anchors rest now, unlit, uncounted by any hunger, and the question that rises in you, drowsy as it is an honest one. How did creatures on one small shore, standing on a single spinning stone, ever come to know any of this at all? How did anyone measure a thing that eats light? The answer is not a single flash of genius. It is a long watch, kept by many hands across many lifetimes, each one adding a single lamp to the same dark pier, none of them seeing the whole harbor. All of them trusting that the next watchman would carry the light a little further. The first lamp is lit in England in 1784 by a clergyman named John Michell, working alone with pen and paper and a mind that liked to wander past the edges of what could be seen. He wonders, on an ordinary evening not so different from this one, what would happen to a star so heavy that its own light could not escape it? A star whose surface gravity would drag every ray of brightness back down before it ever reached the sky. He calls it a dark star. He has no telescope fit to find one, no way to prove it, only the arithmetic and the patience to write it down and let it wait. He reads his idea aloud to the Royal Society, a small room full of candlelit faces, and then he goes home, and the world moves on to other concerns, wars and harvests, and the ordinary business of living. His idea does not vanish, though. It waits, unhurried, for over a century, a modest unread letter tucked into the wider archive of human curiosity, unclaimed for generation after generation, but never quite lost, the way a single stone dropped into deep water is never quite lost either, only settled, resting on a floor no one has visited yet. Then, in 1916, in the middle of a war, a German physicist named Karl Schwarzschild sits in a field hospital, ill, far from any observatory, with nothing but Einstein's freshly published equations of gravity in front of him. Most people would set such a heavy, tangled thing aside and rest. He does not. He finds almost immediately an exact solution, a precise shape for the space around a single point of mass, and folded inside that shape is a boundary, a radius past which nothing, not even light, can climb back out. He has, without ever building an instrument, calculated the waterline of the first true anchor. He sends his solution to Einstein by letter from his hospital bed. Folded pages carried by ordinary wartime post across a continent in turmoil, and he dies within the year, never knowing the name later given to his line in the dark, never knowing it would still be spoken 100 years on by people falling asleep on the far side of the planet. His lamp is small, lit in the worst of circumstances, and it is enough. Decades pass in ordinary human time, wars end, telescopes grow larger, radio dishes rise from open fields, until 1963, when an astronomer named Martin Schmidt sits with the spectrum of a strange, star-like point of light called 3C273. It is too bright, too blue, too strange to be an ordinary star, and for a long while its pattern of light makes no sense to him. Then, one evening, he sees it plainly. The light is not strange at all, only stretched, its every color pulled toward the red exactly as it would be if this point were rushing away from us across a truly enormous distance. It is not a star nearby. It is the brilliant, feeding edge of a black hole impossibly far off, its glow so immense it outshines the 100 billion stars of its own galaxy. Schmidt's small, careful reading of color turns a question mark into a doorway. And through that doorway, an entire population of ancient, ravenous anchors comes quietly into view. Not long after, in the early 1970s, a different kind of eye opens, not on the ground, but above the atmosphere, tuned not to visible light, but to X-rays. The sharp radiation thrown off by matter falling and heating as it spirals toward a horizon. Pointed at a source in the constellation Cygnus, this eye finds a star spinning around something unseen, something crushing the star's outer gas into a shrieking X-ray bright whirlpool. There is no visible companion heavy enough to explain the pull. There is only the signature of the fall itself. Cygnus X1 becomes one of the first stellar anchors ever caught in the act, not by seeing the anchor, but by watching, faithfully, what happens to everything drawn near it. Meanwhile, back at the center of our own galaxy, two teams, one led by Reinhard Genzel, one by Andrea Ghez, begin a watch so patient it barely seems like watching at all. Night after night, year after year, for the better part of 3 decades, they turn their instruments toward that dense, crowded patch near the galactic core and simply track stars. They note where each one sits. They wait. They note where it sits again. Slowly, the paths curve. Slowly, the curves close into ellipses, and one star in particular, the one called S2, sweeps its long, looping orbit around a point where nothing at all can be seen, moving fast enough, tight enough, that only an object of immense, invisible mass could hold it on that leash. This is not a discovery made in a single night. It is a discovery made in patience alone. And in 2020, decades after they began, the two of them share a Nobel Prize for a finding that was really just this: the willingness to keep watch long after most people would have looked away. Then, in the years that follow, a stranger kind of instrument comes together. Not one dish, but many. Scattered across the whole curve of the Earth, high desert plateaus, snowbound peaks, sun-baked valleys, linked by atomic clocks, so exact that together they behave as a single eye the size of the planet itself. This is the effort that finally, in 2019, produces the glowing orange ring around the shadow of M87's great anchor, and later, in 2022, a fainter, more delicate ring around the quiet giant at the heart of our own galaxy. It takes years of data, gathered from every linked station, hard drives so full they had to be flown, not sent. From mountaintop to laboratory, and still more years of careful, unhurried work simply to sift that data into a picture anyone could look at and recognize. Every scientist on every mountain that night was, in their own way, tending a lamp on the same long pier, watching a different corner of the sky, trusting that all their separate small lights, added together, would finally resolve into one clear shape. And in 2015, a different kind of listening begins, in twin facilities set thousands of miles apart across the American landscape, built for exactly one purpose and nothing else. Two enormous L-shaped instruments, built to sense the faintest possible tremor in the fabric of space, a shiver smaller than the width of a single proton, pick up a brief, rising chirp, lasting only a fraction of a second. Two black holes, far off among other galaxies, had spent unmeasured ages circling closer and closer, and in that last instant collided and became one, releasing a wave of pure geometry that crossed the universe and finally reached us, faint and unmistakable, as a tone. For the first time, humanity did not merely see an anchor. It heard two of them meet. Each of these moments, a letter from a country parish, a solution scribbled in a field hospital, a spectrum read late at night, an X-ray flicker, decades of quietly logged star positions, a planet-sized eye, a tremor caught by mirrors in a vacuum, is its own small lamp, lit by someone willing to keep a long, unglamorous watch over something they could not touch, and for most of history, could not even fully picture. None of them worked alone in truth. Each one leaned on the lamps lit before them, and each lamp made the next one easier to place. This is what the whole story amounts to. Laid end to end across 2.5 centuries, not one flash of discovery, but a relay of patient watching, passed gently from hand to hand, the way a fire is kept alive through a long night by people who trust that someone else will tend it after them. And now, here, the watch is yours for a while, if only for these last few settling minutes. No instrument required, no equation to hold on to, just the simple, unhurried act of listening in the dark, the way every one of those watchers once did, before the picture ever came into focus, before the tone ever reached the shore, letting your own eyes rest the way theirs finally could, the pier growing quieter, the lamps growing fewer, one by one, until only the last, low light of the night remains. Tonight has been about anchors, the way the heaviest, stillest things in the universe are not devouring, but merely resting, deep beneath the ordinary traffic of stars. Tonight has been about the harbor at nightfall, and the anchor beneath our own galaxy, holding the great wheel of 100 billion stars in one unbroken, patient turn, without ever once needing to announce itself. Tonight has been about neighboring waters and the great anchors that hold our nearest galactic neighbors together, each one so far away that its light left home before you were born and still arrives, faint and steady, like a small lamp left on for you down a long hallway. Tonight has been about the deepest moorings, weights beyond ordinary counting, sitting at the bottom of their own galaxies, the way a stone settles at the bottom of a lake, changing nothing about the surface, only holding the depths in place. And tonight has been about the long watch, the unhurried centuries in which these anchors mostly sleep, and the even longer patience of the people who learned, faint, Signal by faint signal. How to notice something that gives off no light at all. None of this needs anything from you tonight. You don't have to remember the regions or the sizes or which anchor belongs to which harbor. You don't have to hold on to the thread we followed tonight. You can simply let it drop now, the way you'd let go of a rope once the boat is already tied. Whatever your mind kept of tonight, it kept without effort, and whatever it didn't keep, it didn't need. There's no test waiting at the bottom of sleep, only sleep. Another quiet exploration is already waiting for you on the screen, in case you drift off before this one finishes, or in case you wake for a moment in the middle of the night and want another low voice nearby. You don't have to choose it, or reach for anything at all. Just let it begin on its own, the way a tide keeps coming in whether anyone is watching from the shore or not. If you find yourself still awake, here's a small, easy thought to loosen into rather than answer. Of everything we drifted past tonight, the near harbor, the neighboring waters, the deepest moorings, the long watch, which one would you like to visit again, if a dream happened to carry you that far out? There's nothing to say back tonight. Just let the question drift by like the rest of them did, unanswered, unhurried, already forgiven for going unanswered. Feel how heavy the room has become around you now, the way a harbor feels heavier at night, when the water goes dark and every boat inside it settles a little lower on its lines. Feel your own weight doing something similar, your legs, your arms, the back of your head, all of it sinking a little further into whatever is holding you up. Notice how little effort any of this takes. The anchors we spoke of tonight didn't strain to become heavy, and they don't strain now to stay still. They simply are what they are, and the harbor simply holds them. You can let yourself be held in exactly that same unstrained way. There is no watch left to keep tonight, and nothing further down the page you need to open. Everything out there in the dark is already exactly where it needs to be, turning without hurry, held without effort, moored to nothing but its own enormous stillness, and you can rest here beside all of that, just as unhurried, just as held, sinking a little deeper with every breath you let go of. Sleep well.